If you have spent any time in security testing, you have heard the name Burp Suite. It is the tool that professional penetration testers use. It is what bug bounty hunters use. It is what security engineers use when they are trying to find vulnerabilities before attackers do. And most QA engineers have never opened it. That is a mistake. Because Burp Suite Community Edition is free, it is incredibly powerful, and learning even the basics of it puts you in a completely different category from most testers. Here is what Burp Suite actually does at its core. It sits between your browser and the application you are testing. Every request your browser sends, every response the server sends back, passes through Burp Suite. You can see it all. You can modify it. You can replay it. You can automate variations of it. This is called a proxy. And once you understand how to use a proxy-based tool, you start seeing your application in a completely different way. You stop seeing what the user interface shows you. You start seeing the raw HTTP traffic underneath. And that is where security vulnerabilities live. In this episode, we are going to set up Burp Suite from scratch, configure your browser to route traffic through it, intercept your first request, and use the repeater tool to manually probe an endpoint for vulnerabilities. By the end of this episode, you will have a working security testing environment that professionals use every day. Let us get Burp Suite set up. Go to portswigger.net and download Burp Suite Community Edition. It is free. No account required. Install it like any other application. When you open it, you will be on the Dashboard tab. You do not need to touch anything there yet. The first thing to configure is the proxy. Click the Proxy tab, then click Proxy Settings. You will see that Burp is already listening on localhost port 8080 by default. That is the address your browser will send traffic to. Now configure your browser. Now that you can intercept traffic, let us talk about what you are actually looking at and what to do with it. Every HTTP request has three parts: the method, the URL, and optionally a body. A GET request retrieves data. A POST request sends data. A PUT or PATCH request updates data. A DELETE request removes data. After the method and URL comes the headers. These carry metadata, cookies, authentication tokens, content type, and dozens of other values. Then the body, which is where form data and JSON payloads live. When you intercept a request in Burp, you can read all of this. And more importantly, you can modify it before it reaches the server. This is where testing gets interesting. Let us say you are logged in as a regular user and you intercept a request that fetches your account details. The URL might contain your user ID. What happens if you change that ID to another user's ID and forward the request? If the server returns that user's data, you have found a broken access control vulnerability. What if you intercept a login request? The body contains a username and password. What happens if you remove the password field entirely? Does the server still authenticate you? Some poorly built systems have failed this test. What if you add an unexpected header, like X forwarded for with an IP address from an allow list? Some applications use this header to determine if a request is internal. If they trust it from clients, you can bypass IP-based restrictions. Burp makes all of this possible without writing a single line of code. You are just reading and modifying HTTP traffic. The repeater tool is where you will spend a lot of your time in Burp Suite. Here is how it works. When you intercept a request, right-click on it and choose Send to Repeater. Then go to the Repeater tab. You will see the request on the left side and the response on the right. Click Send. The request goes to the server, the response comes back. Now you can modify the request and send it again. As many times as you want. Instantly. This is extremely useful for security testing because it removes the friction of going through the user interface. You do not have to reload a page, fill out a form, and click Submit every time you want to try a variation. You just modify the raw request and hit Send. Let me walk through a practical example. Suppose you are testing a search endpoint. The request body contains a query parameter. In the browser, you searched for the word test. In Repeater, you can change that to a single quote and send it. If the response throws a database error, you may have found a SQL injection vulnerability. You can try a JavaScript payload in a text field. You can try a very long string to test for buffer overflow or input length handling. You can remove required parameters to see what the server does without them. You can change a numeric ID to a negative number or a string or a decimal. Every one of these variations is a test case. Repeater lets you run them systematically without any overhead. Beyond proxy and repeater, Burp Suite has several other tools worth knowing about even in the Community Edition. The Intruder tool automates sending many variations of a request. You mark positions in a request, define a payload list, and Burp sends the request once for each payload. You can use this to test for username enumeration by sending a list of common usernames and looking for different response times or status codes. Or to test for parameter fuzzing by sending a list of common injection strings. In Community Edition, Intruder is rate limited, which makes it slow. But it still works for small payload lists. The Decoder tab lets you encode and decode strings in various formats: URL encoding, base64, HTML encoding, hex. This is useful when you find encoded values in requests and need to understand what they contain, or when you need to encode a payload before injecting it. The Target tab builds a sitemap as you browse. Every URL you visit through the proxy gets logged here. This gives you a visual overview of the application structure and helps you find endpoints you might have missed during manual testing. The scanner is only available in Burp Suite Professional, which costs money. But the community tools we covered are genuinely powerful and sufficient for most QA security testing work. A practical workflow: enable intercept, browse through the application doing your normal test cases, then review the sitemap to find endpoints you want to probe further, and send interesting requests to repeater for manual testing. Let us recap what we covered. Burp Suite Community Edition is a free proxy-based security testing tool. It sits between your browser and your application, letting you intercept, read, and modify every HTTP request and response. To set it up, install Burp, configure your browser to proxy through localhost 8080, and install Burp's SSL certificate to intercept HTTPS traffic. The Proxy tab captures live traffic as you browse. Use it to find interesting requests to investigate further. The Repeater tab lets you modify and resend individual requests instantly. Use it to test variations, changed IDs, missing parameters, injection payloads, unexpected inputs. The Intruder tab automates sending many payload variations, though it is rate limited in the free edition. Decoder and the sitemap give you supporting capabilities for understanding encoded values and mapping the application structure. The most important shift Burp Suite creates is this: you stop seeing your application through the user interface and start seeing the raw HTTP traffic underneath. That is where security vulnerabilities actually live. Next episode we are going deep on SQL injection. What it is, how to test for it manually, how to use SQL map to automate detection, and how to write test cases that catch it in your CI pipeline. Subscribe to QA Career Lab and I will see you there.